There is a quiet crisis happening across three countries right now that nobody is talking about loudly enough, and it is going to define an entire generation forever. In Spain, in the United Kingdom, and in the United States of America, millions of people who are renting today will still be renting when they are old and retired. Not because they are lazy, not because they spent too much on coffee, but because the housing market in all three countries has structurally broken the path to ownership. And the data to prove this is not from blogs or opinions. It comes from official government statistics, Federal Reserve data, and Barcelona's own Institute for Urban Research. Today I'm going to show you exactly what is happening in each of these three countries, why the pattern is identical, and what it actually means for you right now. Let us start in Spain, because what is happening there right now is the most extreme version of what is coming for the UK and the USA if nothing fundamentally changes. Spain is currently trapped in one of the worst housing crises in all of Europe, and the evidence of it is visible on the streets of every major Spanish city today. Since 2022, rents in Spain have risen by a cumulative 30%, according to the Center for Sociological Research, 30% in just 4 years, while wages barely moved. But here is what makes Spain's situation uniquely devastating. Housing construction has been at rock bottom levels since 2010, averaging just 83,000 homes per year. Compare that to the period between 1970 and 2010, when Spain was building an average of 315,000 homes per year. The collapse in supply is staggering. And Spain's stock of public housing is completely inadequate, according to the Bank of Spain, between 1.5 and 3.3% of total housing stock. The EU average for public housing is 9.3%, meaning Spain has less than a third of the public housing that the average European country provides its citizens. In Barcelona, the situation has become so extreme that 40% of all available homes are being used for tourists and short-term rentals rather than housing local people. Every year, more than 32 million visitors come to Barcelona, almost 20 times the entire local population, and they are competing with residents for housing and driving them out. Tens of thousands of Barcelona residents have taken to the streets with signs reading "Your Airbnb used to be my home," because that is exactly and literally what happened. Spanish society, according to a major analysis published in April 2026, is slowly splitting into two clear groups: those who own everything and those who absolutely own nothing. Since the 2008 crash, the percentage of renters in Spain has risen from 11.9% to 19.2%, nearly double in under 20 years of time. Before the 2008 crisis, almost 60% of young Spanish people between 16 and 29 who had formed their own household lived in owner-occupied properties. Today, that figure has collapsed, and the Barcelona Institute for Urban Research has confirmed that many Spanish renters will never own a home, even in old age. Never. Not when they retire. Not when they are 70. The system has broken so completely that a lifetime of renting is now the expected outcome for millions of Spanish people. In May 2026, thousands of protesters took to the streets of central Madrid, specifically demanding the right to affordable and decent housing, because that right has been taken from them. Now let us cross to the United Kingdom, because the pattern here is remarkably similar, and the UK is following Spain's trajectory with approximately a decade's delay. Up to 1/3 of UK millennials may never be able to own their own home and have no option except renting for their entire lives, according to established research. While 1/2 of UK millennials are on track to rent well into their 40s, paying rent every single month to landlords rather than building equity in their own property. UK house prices in England have risen by 173% since 1997, compared to a real terms income increase of just 19% over the same period. In London, those numbers are even more extreme. House prices have risen by 253% since 1997, while London wages have not come anywhere close to matching that growth. The result is that London renters are paying an average of 44.5% of their entire salary just on rent every single month, with nothing left to save. In a city where 183,000 people are currently homeless and living in temporary accommodation, while property investors own multiple empty investment properties. Less than 30% of UK millennials own property when they reach 30, compared to over 50% of baby boomers who owned property by exactly the same age. And the Resolution Foundation has confirmed that rich young millennials in the UK are now 4 times more likely to own a home as their lower income counterparts of the same age. This means homeownership in the UK is increasingly becoming something only the wealthy young can access, with parental wealth and inheritance determining who gets on the ladder. 36% of all homeowners in England are aged 65 and above, while people aged 25 to 35 make up just 15% of all homeowners. The UK government has announced a target of 1.5 million new homes in this parliament, but the UK has been consistently failing to hit housing targets for over 40 years. Now let us go to the United States, because there too, the pattern is identical, and the most recent data, published by Realtor.com and Fortune, confirms exactly what is happening. There are currently a record 46 million renting households in the United States, the highest number in American history according to the United States Census Bureau data. U.S. home prices rose by an extraordinary 55% between 2020 and 2025, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association report, published in June 2026, just weeks ago. By spring 2024, the typical U.S. homebuyer was paying approximately $2,800 per month, an absolute all-time high, according to Redfin's official data. Baby boomers in the U.S. still account for approximately 42% of all home purchases and 52% of all home sales, according to Realtor.com data published in 2026. While the share of first-time homebuyers has fallen to just 21%, the lowest proportion recorded in more than 4 decades of tracking this data in America. And here is the number that should stop every young American in their tracks. Approximately 1/3 of Gen Z in the United States believe homeownership will never be possible for them. 1/3. Not a small minority, not a fringe view. 1 in 3 young Americans have already given up on the idea that they will ever own a home during their lifetime. That figure was 27% in 2019. It has risen to 32% in 2026, according to a Freddie Mac survey, meaning the hopelessness is actively growing every year. A research paper published by economists Lee and Yu found something even more alarming. When home prices rise to the point where renters cannot afford to buy ever, they give up entirely. And giving up does not just mean giving up on homeownership, it means giving up on saving altogether and redirecting that energy towards spending on experiences instead. Gen Z is spending more than they are saving, working less than previous generations, and making riskier financial investments not because of their character but because of the housing market. The researchers found the share of renters reporting low work effort is nearly twice the rate observed among homeowners. The housing crisis is changing how people relate to work entirely. Fortune magazine described it as follows in March 2026: Gen Z has watched the American dream rot before their eyes and given up on the home that was supposed to be at its center. Baby boomer empty nesters in the USA still own almost twice the share of large family homes as millennial families, according to Redfin data published this year. And around 1/3 of American boomers say they never plan to sell their home, while another 30% say they will not sell for at least another decade from now. This means the housing stock that young Americans need is locked up inside the homes of older Americans who are aging in place and have no plans to release those homes to the market. So what is the same pattern across all 3 countries, Spain, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America, and why is it happening simultaneously in all 3? In all 3 countries, housing construction collapsed after 2008 and has never fully recovered. There are simply not enough homes being built to house the people who need them. In all 3 countries, short-term rentals platforms like Airbnb have removed hundreds of thousands of homes from the long-term rental market into tourist accommodation use. In all 3 countries, institutional investors and buy-to-let landlords have converted homes that could have been sold to first-time buyers into rental assets, generating monthly income. In all 3 countries, governments have consistently prioritized the asset values of existing homeowners over the housing access of aspiring new buyers through tax policy and planning. And in all 3 countries, wages have simply not kept pace with property price inflation. The gap between what people earn and what homes cost has widened every decade since the 1980s. The result is an entire generation who will rent for their entire working lives, pay off someone else's mortgage every month, build no housing equity, and retire with dramatically less wealth. Now let us talk about what the UK has done that Spain and the USA have not, because this is where the story changes, and it actually matters enormously for renters in England right now. The UK's Renters' Rights Act 2025, in force from the 1st of May 2026, gives UK renters the most comprehensive legal protections of any English-speaking country in the world today. Section 21 no-fault evictions are completely abolished in England, meaning landlords cannot simply remove you without a legally proven reason, unlike in 43 American states. Rent increases are limited to once per year and must use the official Form 4A process. You have the right to challenge any above-market increase at a completely free independent tribunal. Your tenancy has no end date. It rolls on indefinitely, giving you genuine long-term security in your rented home regardless of what your original contract said about end dates. Your landlord cannot demand more than 1 month advance rent, cannot discriminate against you for benefits or children, and cannot run bidding wars to push rents above advertised prices. These are extraordinary protections that Spanish renters and American renters simply do not have, and they matter enormously if you are renting in England right now today. But these protections, as important as they are, do not solve the fundamental problem of a generation locked out of ownership and locked into renting for their entire lives. The UK still needs to build dramatically more homes, reform the tax treatment of investment property, and expand public and social housing to address the root cause of the crisis. Here's what you can do right now if you are a renter in England facing this situation, because knowledge and action are the only tools available while the system remains broken. First, know every right the Renters' Rights Act gives you and use every single one of them, including challenging unfair rent increases at the free tribunal that most renters never use. Second, maximize your lifetime ISA if you are under 40, because the government adds a 25% bonus on savings of up to £4,000 per year toward your first home. Third, check your full housing benefit or universal credit housing element entitlement using the free calculator at Entitleto Company UK, because millions of renters are claiming the wrong amount. Fourth, if you have been refused housing because of benefits or children, if your deposit has been unfairly withheld, or if your landlord has broken any of the new rules, report them. Fifth, engage with this issue politically, because Spain's housing crisis did not improve until millions of people took to the streets in May 2026 and demanded their governments act. The 30% of Gen Z in the USA who believe they will never own a home are not statistics. They are people who have been failed by a system that chose asset values over people. And the renters in Spain who will never own a home in old age are not a minority. They are the majority of a generation that deserve better from the governments that served them. The UK has a chance to avoid that outcome through the Renters' Rights Act, through ambitious housing targets, and through policies that prioritize homes for people over assets for investors. Share this video with every renter and every young person you know, because understanding the global scale of this crisis is the first step to demanding the right political solutions. If you found this video helpful, please like it right now, because it helps thousands more renters and young people find this information about the global housing crisis affecting them. Subscribe to UK Housing Alert and hit the notification bell so you never miss an important update on housing law, tenant rights, benefit entitlements, or housing policy changes. We cover UK housing law, tenant rights, DWP changes, and the global housing crisis every single week in plain simple English, so you always know exactly where you stand today. Your rights as a UK renter are stronger than renters in Spain and stronger than renters in the USA. Use every single one of them, because they were hard-won and they matter. UK Housing Alert is here every single week, making sure every renter in England has the knowledge and the legal tools to protect their home in a system that was never built for them. Spain introduced a 100% tax on homes bought by non-EU residents in early 2026, a direct response to foreign investment driving local people out of their own neighborhoods. Barcelona's city council has decided not to renew licenses for over 10,000 short-term rental apartments when they expire in 2028, reclaiming homes for local residents. The Spanish national government is also considering banning foreign property investors, entirely a measure that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago in any Western country. These are radical policy responses to a crisis that has become so severe that governments can no longer ignore it, and both the UK and USA are watching these experiments closely. In the USA, a bipartisan Senate housing affordability bill was advanced in late 2025, a rare moment of cross-party agreement on housing that reflects how extreme the crisis has become. The U.S. housing supply deficit reached 4.03 million homes last year, according to official data, meaning America needs 4 million more homes just to meet existing demand. Yet boomers, who own 1/3 of those homes, say they will never sell, creating a lock-in effect that no amount of new construction can overcome in the near term. The Mortgage Bankers Association projects housing supply could grow by 10 to 14 million units between 2026 and 2035, but this may come too late for millennials already in their 40s. Gen Z in the USA may benefit if they can wait a decade for supply to improve, but for those already in their late 30s and early 40s, the housing window may have already closed. In the UK, the Resolution Foundation has found that homeownership rates among 25 to 34-year-olds in the bottom income third increased by just 3 percentage points since 2015. Meanwhile, the same age group in the top income third saw homeownership increase by 6 percentage points, meaning the gap between rich and poor young people is actively widening, not closing. This is the most dangerous long-term consequence of the housing crisis, not just that young people cannot buy homes, but that only wealthy young people will ever be able to buy them. A society where housing wealth is inherited rather than earned is a society where social mobility becomes impossible and where your parents' property determines your entire financial future. In Spain, that division is already described as complete those who own everything, and those who own nothing, with very little movement possible between those two groups now. The UK and USA are not at that point yet, but the trajectory is unmistakably pointing in exactly that direction if current policies and market conditions continue unchanged. Now let us talk about the UK's advantage that most people watching this video do not fully appreciate because compared to Spain and the USA, the UK renter position has genuinely improved. A renter in England today cannot be no-fault evicted, cannot have their rent raised more than once a year, and cannot have more than 1 month advance rent demanded from them. These protections exist in law right now, and they apply to every single tenancy in England. They are not optional, they cannot be contracted away, and they cannot be ignored by landlords. A renter in Spain has no equivalent of Section 21 abolition, and still faces no-fault evictions in many circumstances depending on the specific region and contract type involved. A renter in most U.S. states can still receive a no-cause eviction notice with as little as 30 days warning regardless of how long they have lived in the property or how good a tenant they have been. This is why the Renters' Rights Act matters so much, not because it solves the affordability crisis, but because it gives renters genuine long-term security in the homes they currently occupy. And that security, knowing you cannot be simply removed, is the foundation on which you can build a financial plan, save money, and navigate a broken housing market more effectively. Use the free tribunal to challenge unfair rent increases. 71% of challengers win and save an average of over £1,000 per year through that single action. Report your landlord to your local council. If they break any of the new rules, the fines of up to £7,000 and £40,000 and £40,000 exist specifically to deter bad behavior. Claim every housing benefit and council tax reduction you are entitled to. Millions of renters are leaving hundreds of pounds per month unclaimed because nobody told them it existed. The global housing crisis that has already trapped a generation of Spanish renters and is well advanced in the USA does not have to produce the same outcome for UK renters. The legal protections now available in England are stronger than anything Spain or the USA provides, but they only work if renters know about them and actively use them every day. That is exactly why UK Housing Alert exists, to make sure every renter in England knows their rights, claims their entitlements, and uses every legal tool the Renters' Rights Act provides. Share this video immediately with every renter you know in the UK, because the contrast between what UK renters now have and what Spanish and American renters still face is extraordinary. Go to Gov.uk to check your rights under the Renters' Rights Act, and go to Entitled to Company UK to check your full housing benefit entitlement. Both are free and both matter enormously. Subscribe to UK Housing Alert right now so you never miss the information that puts the power back in the hands of renters in a housing market that was never designed with them in mind.